Hello and welcome to this webinar recording on social media for researchers. Your presenter today will be Dr. Christian DeFeo, Product Marketing Manager Social for Mandalay. Over to you, Christian.
Thank you very much, Laura, and thank you for joining me on this webinar. Today I'm going to be talking about a little bit about myself and my relationship with social media, because that, I think, informs the background of what I'm about to discuss. Then I'll talk about why you should use social media. Why should you take the risk of going out there and talking to people via this somewhat unconstrained medium? Then I'll also talk about the various types of social media that you can use, touching upon the three major ones: Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Then I'll also talk briefly about specialized online communities, and then I'll come to some conclusions. So about me. Well, as Laura indicated, I'm the Product Marketing Manager Social for Mendeley. I'm responsible for marketing using social means. So that includes using groups on Mendeley and also using our social channels such as Facebook, Twitter, blogs, and so on. I have a PhD in creative writing, which I earned from the University of Southampton in 2010. But more pertinently, I'm doing a second PhD in engineering at Loughborough University. There, I'm studying how online communities can drive innovative behavior. I also presented a paper at the European Conference on Social Media in July 2017, and given the results of my studies and my work experience, I can say with some confidence that I know how social media can provide an excellent showcase for one's talents. So contrary to popular belief, social media is nothing new. The concept of social media goes all the way back to John Donne's poem saying that no man is an island entire of itself. We have, as a species, an inherent need to communicate, to connect, and to share ideas. And it has existed as long as the postal system has existed. Reliably, that's around 1740. Benjamin Franklin, who you see pictured in this slide, was an early proponent. As the historian Caroline Winterer has pointed out, in an age when the letter was the only readily available technology for distance communications, thousands of correspondence chains connected people around the Atlantic, allowing for deep intellectual and emotional relationships to form among learned people across large distances. But what did he use it for? It was a network to gain reputation. Franklin was part of a social media network which could be called the Republic of Letters. And basically, learned people gained their reputation by communicating with each other, presenting their experiments, presenting their findings. Franklin, in particular, presented it to the Royal Society. It was a great way to exchange ideas, in particular about electricity, about botany, about science in general. It was also a way of exchanging results. In the case of Franklin's correspondence, these were put into a volume cut about his electrical experiments. The same effects are available, although it's in greater densities thanks to the modern tools to researchers today. As you can see, here's a little graph showing how Franklin's social network worked for the invention of the lightning rod. Your social network can be far greater, far richer, far more deep. So know your social media. Let's begin by talking about Facebook. Now, I would adhere to the idea that you should have the right tool for the right job. Facebook is an ideal means for prominent individuals. If somebody is looking up Stephen Hawking, for example, he should certainly have a Facebook page of his own because he's well known in his own right. It is more difficult for individuals within the vast sea of Facebook in order to get noticed. However, institutions are finding that Facebook is a good means to communicate with the public. So, for example, here we see an example from SPERI, which is the Sheffield Political Economy Research Institute at the University of Sheffield. They use it to promote events, promote videos, push out papers, talk about subjects of the day. And they have quite a good following because of that. Twitter is another great medium. This is actually much more for individuals. It's a dynamic, quick-fire form of social media that allows participation in the latest topics of the day, usually via hashtags. As I say, it's good for individuals to disseminate their views on their subject, and it's also great for people to publicize themselves and their work. Because of the free-flowing nature of Twitter, and because of its centricity around topics as opposed to necessarily individuals, people who are not necessarily well known to begin with can make themselves more well known via Twitter. So, for example, is Dr. Catherine Mack, who goes by the handle Astro Katie. She studies dark matter. She works at Caltech and also Melbourne University. She has quite a following. However, there is a caveat associated with using Twitter, is that there is the possibility that you'll get drawn into discussions which don't have necessarily anything to do with the science or the subject field that you're in. For example, the prominent footballer and TV presenter Gary Lineker has been drawn into political discussions on Twitter, and it's unfortunate, maybe necessarily for his television presenting career, that some people who would be watching him on television have been put off by his political views, in this case about Brexit. Nevertheless, because of his prominent profile, he has been able to engage more intimately with other people and to show the depth of character and the breadth of interest based upon what he's done on Twitter. But I would like to also point out that Astro Katie is a particularly good example because she adds depth to her profile. So she has on her Twitter profile, she's pinned a tweet at the top, which goes to her website, and it has a frequently asked questions. It also encourages people to look at her website and to delve into her science more deeply, which on Twitter wouldn't necessarily be particularly well covered by tweets of 140 characters, though in some cases people can type up to 280 characters. Nevertheless, it provides a positive means for her to publicize herself and her work. Finally, we'll talk about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is purely professional. It can be conceived of as a replacement for keeping each other's business cards. It's unusual in its professional etiquette. If you look on LinkedIn fairly recently, you'll see that there are a number of posts where people say, I don't want to socially engage, as in, not necessarily social media, but as in socially, as in personally engage on LinkedIn. I'm only here for business contacts. And that seems to be the defined purpose of that particular medium. Furthermore, LinkedIn is more focused on people that you already have likely met in real life. Quite a few people on Facebook have never met each other in person. Quite a few, even more so on Twitter, these are people that you've never met in person. LinkedIn, generally speaking, is people that you've met in person at least once or traded business cards at a conference. Nevertheless, it is a good place to connect with others and also to keep track on each other's progress and how they're doing. Also, more recently, it's become a good place to publicize one's ideas via posts. You can see a post that I put up, which was a little over a year ago, I believe, where I talked about how the internet was moving from screen-based interfaces to ones that were utilizing voice. And this potentially indicated to people who were interested in my profile where my interest lay. It was also for other researchers who linked up with me through my Loughborough University activities to see where some of my additional research interests lay and some of my professional experience lay. Similarly, LinkedIn can be a showcase for yourself. Having covered the major mediums, let's talk about specialized online communities. Social networks are generalized, and that means that you can run into the Gary Lineker problem. Namely, you'll get a lot of static about, say, things which are not germane to your field of endeavor or even your field of interest. If you're trying to talk about nuclear physics, you may not be interested in talking about the Great British Bake Off. So you can encounter a lot of noise in the generalized channels. There are specialized areas to networks. For example, Mendeley is contributing to this by developing its groups functionality. As you can see here, we have a group which refers to Make a Career in Research, where people can exchange ideas about how to develop their careers in research and share top tips. Other specialized communities exist for other subjects, such as electronics engineering. Having said all this, what can we conclude? The urge to network is a basic human impulse. It has been a lever of scientific progress, as we've seen in the case of Benjamin Franklin, and for communicating that progress for quite some time. And in a world in which it's difficult to gain a reputation, it has become a basic need for researchers to communicate with each other via this means. A lot of researchers publish papers. These papers, the numbers of papers which are published every year is vast. How do you stand out from the crowd? One way is to be accessible, engaging, and engaged, and social media helps you to do that. But as you do this, remember, use the right tool for the right job. For Facebook should be for prominent individuals and institutions. Use it for videos and events. Facebook has proven to be particularly powerful for video content, and there are indications that Facebook is moving in the direction of being a more video content-oriented platform. Twitter is good for rapid-fire statements, and you can use links to your own website to provide further information and further details which 140 characters is not going to help you capture. LinkedIn is for professional profiles and postings related to your profession. And specialized online communities exist for discussions within your subject field. To a greater or lesser extent, we are all on the network. It's a question for a modern researcher to develop themselves and to use social media to their advantage. Having said all that, thank you very much for your time, and I hope that this presentation was useful to you.